The world always called her Rayhan, but every time she looked in the mirror, the girl staring back whispered another name, Ronnie. She had lived her whole life as a secret folded between fear and silence. But the day she chose truth over tradition, she didn't just change her name, she rewrote her destiny. It was a quiet night. The moon hung low over the city's oldest neighborhood, where dim lights flickered over cracked pavements and fading walls. In the corner of an ancient courtyard, a young woman sat alone, gazing up at the stars. Her name was Ronnie, at least that's what she called herself now. To the world, she was still known as Rayhan, but inside her, she had always been Ronnie. From a very young age, she knew she was different. While her brothers played cricket in the street, she would wrap her mother's scarf around her shoulders and dance in front of the mirror, lost in a dream that felt more real than anything else. Back then, it didn't feel strange. It felt like home. As she grew older, though, the world grew sharper. Why do you walk like a girl? Are you a boy or a girl? Act like a man. The voices around her became louder than the one within her, and every word felt like a thread pulling her further away from herself. But the question never left her. Who am I? One evening, everything began to change. She found a small online community, people like her. People who understood without asking too many questions. For the first time, someone called her Ronnie without hesitation. Just that simple word, typed on a screen, felt like a gentle hand on her shoulder. It was the first time she felt truly seen. From that moment, she made a decision. She would no longer hide. She would no longer apologize for existing. Ronnie was ready to live as herself. But readiness didn't make the world any softer. The morning after that decision, she stood in front of her wardrobe, fingers hovering over the clothes that had never really belonged to her. T-shirts that felt like armor, jeans that dragged like chains. That day, she pulled out a kurta she had once secretly bought from a local market, deep blue, with silver embroidery that shimmered when it caught the light. Her hands trembled as she put it on. She caught her reflection in the mirror. The kohl she'd carefully lined along her eyes, the soft blush on her cheeks. It wasn't perfect, but it was her. For the first time, the mirror didn't lie. It didn't judge. It simply showed her what she had always known to be true. She stepped outside. The streets looked the same, but they felt different now, sharper, louder. Every glance felt like it lasted too long. Every whisper felt directed at her. Is that Rayhan? What is he wearing? He's gone mad. But she walked on. At the bus stop, she stood apart. People stared, and a group of teenage boys snickered. One of them called out, Oi, hero banani chali hai? Chal garja. Her chest tightened, but she didn't turn back. She kept her eyes forward, hands gripping her dupatta just a little tighter. When she finally reached the NGO office, the one she had been visiting secretly for weeks, the smile on Ms. Farida's face made everything else melt away. You look beautiful, Ronnie, she said warmly, as if she had been waiting to say it for years. Ronnie blinked fast, trying not to cry. Thank you, she whispered. Today is the first day I left home, as me. Ms. Farida nodded. Then let's make sure it's not the last. That afternoon, Ronnie sat in a circle of others like her, some shy, some bold, some still figuring it out. But for once, she wasn't the odd one out. She was just Ronnie, one of many voices, many hearts, many stories. And though the world outside still felt heavy, inside this room, something had shifted. For the first time, hope didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like a plan. She was Ronnie, and she was ready to live as herself. That evening, as Ronnie made her way home, the city lights felt less like spotlights and more like stars, distant, maybe, but full of silent support. But her steps slowed as she reached the narrow lane leading to her house. The same old rusted gate, the same cracked porch. Her heart pounded. Inside, she knew, were questions waiting like knives behind every familiar face. She paused at the door. Should she wipe off the kajal? Should she change back into the old Rayhan? Her hand hovered over the latch. Then she remembered Ms. Farida's words. Let's make sure it's not the last. So she took a breath, straightened her dupatta, and walked in. Her mother was sitting in the lounge, rosary beads in hand, the television humming in the background. At first, she didn't look up, but then she did and froze. The silence stretched long, wrapping around them like cold smoke. "Rayhan, what is this?" her mother asked, her voice quiet but sharp, heavy with confusion. Ronnie opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her throat felt like it was full of thorns. "I'm not Rayhan," she finally whispered. "I'm Ronnie." Her mother blinked, and for a moment, just a second, Ronnie saw fear. Not anger, not disgust, just fear. As if something precious was slipping from her fingers and she didn't know how to hold on. "Beta," her voice cracked. "What are you saying?" Ronnie knelt beside her, placing her hand gently on her mother's lap. "I'm saying I'm still your child, just not the one you thought I was. But I've always been like this. I just didn't have the courage to show you." There was no immediate embrace, no acceptance, just a quiet turning of the head, eyes misted and distant. Ronnie didn't push. She just sat there, waiting, her hand still resting where it had landed. In that silence, something fragile held on, a thread, thin but unbroken. That night, Ronnie didn't sleep much, but she didn't cry either. And in the morning, she woke up early, tied her hair back, and got ready, again, as herself. There was a life to build now, one that was hers. Final chapter. The mirror and the door. It had been 6 months since Ronnie first stepped out of her house as herself. The road hadn't gotten easier. Her mother still struggled with her transition. Some days she wouldn't speak. Other days she would try, fumbling over pronouns, emotions, and old expectations. Her father had refused to acknowledge her entirely, choosing silence over confrontation. Her brothers avoided her in public, unsure of what to say to their old friend, their new stranger. But Ronnie no longer shrank under their discomfort. She had started working part-time at the NGO, teaching young transgender kids how to read and write, helping them dream bigger than she ever had at their age. She had even begun speaking at small gatherings, sharing her story, not as a victim, but as someone still standing, still shining. And that strength began to show. She walked differently now. Straighter, steadier. Not as someone trying to go unnoticed, but as someone whose presence was no longer negotiable. Still, some nights were heavy. Some days broke her in quiet ways, a whisper behind her back, a stare that lingered too long, a friend who stopped calling. But she had learned something powerful in these 6 months. Belonging doesn't always begin outside you. Sometimes it begins within. One rainy morning, something changed. Her mother knocked on her bedroom door, something she hadn't done in weeks. Ronnie opened it, surprised to see her holding a small plastic bag. "I went to the market," her mother said, eyes lowered. "I saw this and thought maybe you'd like it." Inside was a soft pink scarf. Simple, inexpensive, but Ronnie held it like it was spun from gold. Her voice trembled. "Amy." Her mother still couldn't say Ronnie. Not yet. But she smiled, a small, unsure smile, and touched Ronnie's cheek. "You always liked these colors as a child. I remember." That night, Ronnie cried, but not out of pain. It was something else. A slow, cautious hope. A week later, she got an email from a small art gallery in Lahore. They had seen a photo of her from one of her speaking events, the way she carried herself, her eyes full of fire. The owner, a woman named Mare, wanted to feature a portrait series of people from the trans community. She asked if Ronnie would be part of it, not as a subject only, but as a collaborator. Ronnie agreed. Not with hesitation. Not with fear. But with joy. Over the next few weeks, she met with Mare often, sipping chai in the sunlit rooms of the gallery, sharing stories of her childhood, her battles, her dreams. They chose photographs, wrote poems together, even recorded voice notes of laughter and silence. The exhibition was called Becoming Light. On opening night, the room was full. Artists, poets, activists, families, strangers. Ronnie stood beside her portrait, wearing the pink scarf her mother had given her, her head held high. When the speech was announced, people turned, and Ronnie stepped forward. "I once thought I had to fight the world to exist," she said, her voice steady. But I realized I only had to stop fighting myself. There was silence. Then applause. Real, resounding, standing applause. In the crowd, her mother was there, sitting quietly in a corner, her eyes wet.
She didn't clap.
But she smiled. And this time, she whispered the name softly, so softly. Ronnie. And Ronnie heard it. Later that night, when the gallery emptied and the lights dimmed, Ronnie stood alone in front of her portrait. Her younger self might not have recognized the woman in the frame, not because she looked different, but because she finally looked free. As the rain tapped gently on the gallery windows, Mare came over and asked, "So, what's next for you?" Ronnie smiled. "I'm not sure," she said, "but I know it's mine." She walked out into the rain, not hiding from it, not shielding her face. She let it soak her. The water ran down her cheeks, her arms, her scarf. People rushed for cover, but she stood there, laughing, radiant. Because for the first time in her life, the world didn't scare her. The girl in the mirror had walked through the door, and she was never going back.